Live from the TV30 studio, here is Jim Schneider.
And friends, we thank you for joining us here on WVCY for inFocus, critical information that we're going to be bringing to your attention this evening as Israel was attacked this weekend, this time by Iran. We saw a number of rockets and missiles and UAVs that were sent in against Israel, a launch from a number of sources. The Israeli Defense Forces announced that they were operating at really full throttle to defend Israel. And also we see this as the enemies of Israel have vowed to wipe her off the face of the earth. As things were unfolding this past weekend, as it was our late afternoon on Saturday, there was a statement made from the Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari of the Israel Defense Forces to describe what was taking place. Let's see that video clip.
Iran has launched a direct attack from Iranian soil towards the state of Israel. We are closely monitoring Iranian killer drones that are en route to Israel sent by Iran. This is a severe and dangerous escalation. Our defensive and offensive capabilities are at the highest level of readiness ahead of this large-scale attack from Iran. Together with our partners, the Israel Defense Forces is operating at full force to defend the state of Israel and the people of Israel. This is a mission that we are determined and ready to fulfill. I will keep on updating you. Thank you.
Coming from the IDF, just as those missiles were launched against Israel coming from Iran. Joining me in discussion tonight, we welcome back Dr. Richard Schmidt, pastor of Union Grove Baptist Church and also founder of Prophecy Focus Ministries, speaker on the TV program Prophecy Focus, that aired just a short time ago, also on radio, Prophecy Unfolding, some 32 years in law enforcement, acting sheriff of Milwaukee County, author of several books. And Brother Schmidt, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Boy, in these unprecedented times, we have a lot to discuss.
We really do. And just last week, you were on this program, and we were talking about the 6-month anniversary, really, of Hamas's attack against Israel. And we now see that Hamas denies Israel the right to exist. So do other Islamic nations as well. But now this past weekend, it is Iran launching such an attack.
And the interesting thing is, and I'm not sure who's going to agree to what on this particular issue, but allegedly Israel attacks a place in Damascus where it took out some of the Iranian leaders. That, of course, Iran said that's a non-starter. We're not going to put up with that. So Iran then decides to do this threat, which for a week or two, that threat's been out there. People have been wondering, is Iran really going to do something they've never done before, move beyond just letting their proxies attack Israel? Will Iran actually step up and actually do what now we know to be a reality? They did. Yeah,
350 some suicide, they called them suicide drones, cruise missiles, and rockets launched against Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting when you talk about these three different things, and again, I inundate myself with this, but some people might be wondering, well, what do those three different things do? So one thing which is called UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. In other words, they're if you will, plane-sized drones that have missiles attached to them, and they literally take these drones unmanned. That's the big deal. Unmanned aerial vehicles, they launch them up, and their target was to get those from all the way from Iran all the way to Israel. Well, the United States actually stepped up to the plate, and our fighter jets took those out. Then you have the other two things you mentioned, the cruise missiles and the ballistic missiles. The cruise missiles basically go in a low trajectory and attempt to kind of fly under the radar, which they didn't do. The Iron Dome and some other things that we'll talk about stop that. And then you have the ballistic missiles, which actually take a higher trajectory. So they had three different ways they tried to get to Israel. They all failed.
99%, they're saying. So just a couple of really of no real grave property damage, no loss of life in all of this. Hit an airfield area, I understand.
Yeah, and as you said, this is, I mean, you want to talk about the technology that exists today. 350 missiles and unmanned vehicles, aerial vehicles coming out. Now, actually, they only stayed about 300 of those actually made it up into the air and started the trajectory. According to reports, about at least 50 or more of these type of weapons, they went up and they came right down in Iranian territory, and that was a great, if you will, blessing for the Israeli people. But what a powerful thing that took place, and as you stated, a couple of minor damages that took place. Unfortunately, one, my understanding, Palestinian young lady, about a 7-year-old, was injured. But when you talk about 300 unprecedented amount of missiles coming at one place, and you have one injury, that's amazing.
Yeah, we're going to put that map back up on the screen again to give you that idea of the trajectory that we're coming from Iran. Again, this is just an illustration, but vividly portrays what happened, because we see that massive launch coming from Iran, but also something else was happening from the south as well, from Yemen.
Well, we had multiple places that were firing at that time. Now, Iran did a major push. Yemen, of course, started up, which is the southern end of Israel, actually over 1,000 miles south of Israel. Yemen has been doing what they've been doing from the Houthis firing in. Mm-hmm. Then the north side, of course, you've got Hezbollah that kept up their barrage from Lebanon. And my understanding is Gaza got a few rounds off as well. But the damage, again, God through technology, God through the use of allies such as the United States really stepped up to the plate. And all these missiles and unmanned vehicles, if you will, got destroyed, and Israel was saved.
The Israeli President Isaac Herzog, said the strike in Israel was tantamount to a declaration of war by the Persian state, and then said that Israel is still, though, seeking peace.
Well, again, Israel is never, I'm just going to be straightforward. The Bible makes it very clear. Israel is not going to have a peaceful solution here. The Bible is very clear that until Jesus Christ comes back, Revelation 20 verses 1 to 7, sets up his millennial kingdom, what's known as from Luke 21:24, the time of the Gentiles, makes it clear Israel is going to be constantly under attack. So would they love peace? Of course they would. And one day the Messiah will come, and they will get that peace. But until then, everybody can have their peaceful negotiations. But I hate to tell you, folks, the Bible says not happening till Christ returns.
You know, I know that the fingerprints of Iran were all over the attacks from Hamas, from Hezbollah, the attacks from the north there as well. But this really removes all doubt for the skeptic out there.
Well, it does, because especially the Christian media, the Christian conservative churches, Israel itself, and others, and even when we get into the governmental issue, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, everybody has been saying Iran is the head of this. Yeah. They've tried to stay out of it because they don't want to get bombed. Well, it's going to be very interesting, because now the speculation, what is Israel going to do? Are they going after, if you will, the big head of the dragon, which is Iran? And I'm going to make an educated speculation. I think there's going to be retaliation coming up specifically from the Israel Defense Force.
Let's take a look here at a UAV interception, and this, again, coming from the Israeli Defense Forces, and just to kind of see how this is portrayed and how it occurred.
יש פגיעה. יש פגיעה משתיים, המטרה הופלה. לא נפלה. 4 שיגר על המטרה המזרחית ביותר. הטיל הראשון. 2 לוקח במורי 9. 2 תהיה מתחתיך, לוקח 2 מתחתיך ב2, 3, 1 אני ממליץ. יש פגיעה. 2 אם אתה מגע לשק. יצא לאחורי מיד... יש תוצאה. הולך לבצע. רשאי, זה חיובי. הצעתי.
Pastor Rich, we're seeing extreme precision with this Iron Dome, if you will.
Yeah, it's amazing technology, and there's actually 3 systems which we talked a little bit about. You have the Iron Dome, which is basically the short-range missile, that anti-ballistic missiles. They also have now what's called David's Sling, which is more of a mid-range ballistic missile to take out incoming missiles. And then they have what's known as Arrow 2 and Arrow 3, which are meant for a little bit longer range, taking out of missiles from Iran or wherever they might be coming. Super effective. Again, we have to give, and I want to give the American Air Force a great deal of credit because they're the ones that took out the majority of the unmanned aerial vehicles. So we did a great job, and I want to commend our military for that. But on the other hand, then, a lot of the money, and again, we commend our government for investing a great deal, millions and millions and even billions of dollars into the air defense system, if you will, to help Israel. They've, of course, spent a lot of their own money, other allies, but at least from this perspective, America really stood up and did a great job in defending Israel this time.
And Israel is a critical ally for the United States there.
Absolutely. And again, from our conservative Christian standpoint, why is Israel so important to us? Well, it's a matter of we go back to the Abrahamic covenant, Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3, and God made it very clear. He's going to bless those who bless Israel, curse those who curse Israel. I'm glad America is standing, at least for the most part, as an ally of Israel.
Now, you saw the clip from Daniel Hagari at the beginning of the program. These missiles were coming. How long did it take these missiles to actually get to Israel?
Well, that's an interesting thing. Some of them were much, much quicker than others. Some it's like within less than an hour. The unmanned aerial vehicles, that's an 8-hour trip with those things to get over to Israel. I think that's a great deal why they didn't make it, because we had plenty of time to shoot them down. But again, the different types of missiles, the cruise missiles, running low, running fast. But boy, it's just amazing. Again, the technology took it all out.
And they knew they were coming. And the spokesman, Daniel Hagari, spoke a little bit later with a little bit more information. We're going to show that clip right now.
Last night, a defensive coalition of Israel and its international partners successfully thwarted a large-scale attack from Iran. Iran and its proxies launched over 350 suicide drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles and rockets from Iran, Iraq, Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon towards Israel, with approximately 60 tons of warheads and explosive materials. But the threat from Iran was met with the aerial operational, technological, and intelligence superiority of a united defensive coalition of international allies led by the United States together with Great Britain, France, and other partners in the region. Together, we intercepted 99% of the threat towards Israel. Together, we thwarted Iran's attack. Iran's unprecedented attack was met with an unprecedented defense. This was the first time that such a coalition worked together against the threat of Iran and its proxies in the Middle East. Even while under attack from Iran, we have not lost sight, not for one moment, of our critical mission in Gaza to rescue our hostages from the hands of Iran's proxies, Hamas, of our moral duty to do everything we can to bring back home 133 hostages. Hamas recently rejected the hostage release proposal offered to them by the mediators. Hamas and Iran want to ignite the Middle East and to escalate the region. We are still on high alert and assessing the situation. Over the last few hours, we approved operational plans for both offensive and defensive actions. We will continue to protect the state of Israel, and together with our partners, we will continue to build a more secure and stable Middle East. Thank you.
Very interesting comments that you're making there, because not only do we have all these missiles coming in and weaponry coming against them, but there's still this war going on in Gaza as well.
Well, absolutely, and we're seeing these things are going to keep escalating. I don't see any quick solution here. But one of the big issues, of course, Israel still wants to get those hostages out of Gaza. The problem now is, and I mean this is getting to be common knowledge, out of the 133 hostages that he just talked about, we have no idea how many are even alive anymore.
Right.
The rumors are that the majority, if not all, might be deceased. Now that's rumor. We don't know the facts, but it plays into this. So we still have Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stating we need to still get into Rafah, that is Israel, and wipe out Hamas, as well as attempt to get the hostages. And it's tough. They've got fronts on every side. You mentioned Yemen on the south, Gaza on the west, Hezbollah up on the north in Lebanon, and now Iraq and Iran. We'll see what happens with them.
And the area, too, what people refer to as the West Bank, Judea, Samaria. I mean, there's even threat with the Palestinian Authority there as well. Right,
and you just don't know. And I know multiple people throughout the last couple of days has come up with, well, is this Ezekiel 38 and 39, which we've been hearing since October 7th. And no, it's not Ezekiel 38 and 39, but boy, is it setting the stage for what one day will become a reality, when all the nations that surround Israel, they are indeed going to come up against her.
Okay, so before I continue on here, you brought up Ezekiel 38 and 39. You said this is not that war. What is that war that Ezekiel 38 and 39 is speaking of?
Yeah, Ezekiel 38 and 39, it's really when, and just to be straightforward, it's the Islamic nations that surround Israel are literally going to rise up. The Bible says that they're going to come up over the mountains of Israel. Here's the big difference between now and then. God literally is going to intervene and wipe out those, if you will, the soldiers coming up over the mountains to attack Israel. Right now, it's the United States of America, it's the Israel Defense Force, it's Jordan that helped out, Saudi Arabia that helped out, France, Germany, United Kingdom. That's not how Ezekiel 38 plays out. In Ezekiel, God himself actually is the one that defends Israel and wipes out its enemies.
Dr. Richard Schmidt with us here tonight on inFocus, and I'd like to call your attention to a posting that went out on X. This is from Iran, and this is after this attack against Israel was carried out. They said, conducted on the strength of Article 51 of the UN Charter pertaining to legitimate defense, Iran's military action was in response to the Zionist regime's aggression against our diplomatic premises in Damascus. The matter can be deemed concluded. However, should the Israeli regime make another mistake, Iran's response will be considerably more severe. It is a conflict between Iran and the rogue Israeli regime from which the U.S. must stay away, all in caps. So here we have saying, okay, we have launched 350 missiles and rockets and everything against you. It's now concluded here.
Well, let's go back to, we have to get rid of our presuppositions for a minute and our biases as Christian conservatives. What is really going on behind closed doors? As Christians, as conservatives, as pro-Israel people, we're all about protecting them, and that's a good thing. But what is actually happening here? Iran as a country had to posture, and that's exactly what they did. When their diplomats were killed in Damascus, it would be the same if somebody attacked America, if they took out some of our, if you will, head politicians, we'd be furious. Well, Iran had to stand up, if you will, make this posture, a huge posture that they did this time. But I think they're scared to death right now that they knew they had to do something, and they really did something, and America intervened. I don't think they figured the United States would be as strong as we did and be as strong in taking out their missiles and so forth. So now Iran has to say, okay, we've gotten our revenge. Let's all take a chill pill and go home. Well, that's not going to happen, especially with Israel. President Biden, at least as of this moment, he's standing down. He's like, okay, we'll accept it. No harm, no foul. Well, there was a lot of harm and there was a lot of foul here, even though they didn't hit Israel, and fortunately no individuals got killed. It's a huge military invasion that they attempted to pull off. Israel's not going to stand for it.
Yeah, not at all. We understand Israel's called up its reserves to help keep things going. In a post to X, Daniel Hagari said that this will allow the continuation of the effort and readiness to defend the state of Israel and maintain the security of the residents.
Yeah, and again, I'd like to liken this, and I thought a lot about this over the last couple of days. What happens when you have a bully? What happened, and I don't mean to diminish the massiveness of this, but if you've got a bully at school or a bully at work or a bully that just constantly is pushing and pushing, the only way to stop the bully is somebody's got to take the bully down. And that's exactly what's happening here. Iran is the big bully that's been using its proxies to, if you will, constantly press on Israel, constantly sending these terrorist attacks that have been happening over and over and over again since 1948.
Yeah.
Well, finally, they said, we're done with the bully, and I believe we're going to see in very short order Israel is going to step up to the plate. And Iran, who and this is speculation on my part, I think America is scared to death of Iran. I think the public, the American people, have been taught that we need to fear Iran and be scared to death of them. You try and find out what is their real military strength. That seems to be a big secret. And the only things that are out there is Iran is not as strong as we seem to think they are. Apparently Israel thinks the same thing because they're getting ready to do something, and we'll find that out in short order.
Matter of fact, Iran's true colors were shown. Let's show you another video here from the IDF.
Iran fired hundreds of the most powerful missiles and drones directly at millions of Israelis. Iran has been attacking Israel for the past 45 years by ordering its vast proxy network to do it for them. Iran used to hide their terrorism behind other terrorists. This is no longer the case. Iran has come out of the shadows to expose their true face, the face of a radical and irrational regime that wants to end the entire free world, directly launching a coordinated attack with missiles and drones at Israeli civilians from inside its own territory. This attack shows Iran's true colors.
Virtually what you were just saying here.
Identical. The big bully is flexing its muscles, trying to make themselves known. You have to understand this, and again, from a government perspective, the heads of Iran, they need to look strong for their people. And this was a way that, if you will, they could save some face and still come out after Israel. How much of that did they know would be shot down? Did they understand that 99% of their, if you will, attack would basically produce nothing? I don't believe Iran wants a world war. I don't believe Iran wants the United States coming down on them or any other major power. Again, that's a bit of speculation, but again, the bully pushed Israel, and Israel said, enough.
It appears that the phone call that President Biden made to the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that the president came away saying, hey, this is a win. Consider it a win in that, there's no major damage done by any means. All these have been intercepted, and you're coming out looking pretty good. And by the way, the U.S. is not going to participate in any offensive action here.
Well, here's the thing. And again, boy, and over the last couple of days, I've listened to multiple different shows and talk shows, and people are fired up. People from Israel specifically, and I like to listen to the news stations coming out of Israel. I mean, they're fired up mad. We must retaliate. We can't allow Iran to push us around anymore. On the other hand, you've got the president saying, all right, no harm, no foul. Well, if that was our country being attacked, would we simply say, well, we stopped the threat, therefore everything's good? The majority, I think, of conservative especially, and the Christian community is pretty fired up about this too. You can't do this to Israel. If you let that, if you will, that threat remain, it's the exact same thing that Hamas did. Hamas from Gaza has been firing rockets into Israel. They just stated on there 45 years worth. Finally, Benjamin Netanyahu said, we're done with this. We're done. In other words, we got to take them out or they're just going to keep killing our people. So it's the same thing with Iran, which is much, much, much more powerful than little Hamas down in Gaza. It's going to continue.
Let me ask you also about the United States response. Now, you certainly credited the U.S. for their role in defending Israel, taking out many of these rogue missiles and so forth coming in. And some will look at, yes, the U.S. is coming to Israel's aid, but is not the U.S. also come to Iran's aid, if you will? I mean, by lifting the sanctions, allowing massive chunks of money to go into to Iran.
This is where we all sit here and scratch our head. It's like, how can you be doing supporting Iran on one hand and then supporting Israel on the other. How in the world do you justify this? Well, again, we only know what the open source media tells us. We only know what the White House press releases tell us. But there's got to be a whole lot going on that me and you, we just don't know. So why did the United States government just pull off $26 billion of sanctions have been lifted against Iran? $26 billion. That's a lot of money that now Iran has to do whatever they're going to do. We still have this problem with the Iran nuclear deal. And that's probably one of the biggest things that American citizens like myself are concerned about. What about if they get that nuclear power? So again, we're scared of them for whatever reason. What's going on behind closed doors between the American president, if you will, our administration and their government? I don't know.
Well, and there's another aspect to this too, and that is the Biden administration has attacked our oil. We were energy independent as a nation, but because of the fact that he's put the stop on so much drilling and so forth in our country, we are now dependent on other oil. We're not able to export it like we were, and as a result, Iran is reaping a whole lot of money because of the fact that their oil becomes more valuable around the world to Russia and other locations.
Yeah, and I go right back to the problem of the globalist picture. Again, very strong. I go right back to Scripture, which is, of course, my base. Revelation 13 makes it very clear. One world government, one world religion, one world economy. Our president has, in this particular administration, it's all about the globalist picture. And this is all leading right into it. When we lose our energy independence, when our money becomes worthless sometime, it's going to happen. We just don't know when. All these things are setting the stage, quite frankly, for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled.
I have an article that came out from the Daily Wire yesterday, and the headline caught my attention. I'm going to have you comment on this. This is John Bolton, the former UN ambassador from the United States, and he said Biden's an embarrassment to the U.S., but I want to focus on Israel. Israel must hit Iran or attacks will get worse. Here's specifically what he said. He said, unless Iran sees a powerful response, that risk will continue, and the way to reestablish deterrence is not proportional. That's academic talk. The way you establish deterrence is by telling your adversary, if you ever try that again, the price you will pay will be so much higher than any gain that you think you got, you shouldn't even think about it. So I think Israel has a wide range of potential targets. You start by flattening Iran's air defense capabilities. Next, you might go after the headquarters of the regular military and the Revolutionary Guard. You could consider going after their oil infrastructure, the oil fields, the distribution pipelines, the export port facilities. And most importantly, I think Israel should be looking at this as an opportunity to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program, which is the existential threat that Israel faces.
I would love if that happened. I mean, just as a human being, I would love if that nuclear power was taken away from them. I would love if that threat that many of us here right in the United States were seriously concerned about it. When we talk with our groups at churches and different conferences, people are very concerned and they're scared to death about this. So I have to agree with them. How do you stop the bully? You wipe him out. You put him in jail. And in this case, you wipe them out and you stop the threat. You've got to stop the threat, or we're going to keep we're seeing Israel attack. And I'm going to go a step further. It's not just going to be Israel being attacked. We're going to be attacked right here on our own soil.
We are the great scene, are we not?
We are, according to them. I'm not going to agree with that statement, of course. But again, the Muslim community, the Islamic world, they want us gone, meaning America. They want America gone. They want Christian conservatives gone. They want the Jewish people in the state of Israel gone. We've got to fight.
Yeah, Jews and infidels, there's no room for them in the Islamic plan. Well, we also have another clip here. This is the IDF chief of the General Staff, Herzai Halavi, who thanked various our forces for coming alongside Israel to assist.
And Iran's attack on Israel failed. Operation Iron Shield proved the strength of our ironclad cooperation. I want to thank all our international partners who stood up to Iran's aggression. Iran's attack has created new opportunities for cooperation in the Middle East. We are closely assessing the situation. We remain at our highest level of readiness. Iran will face the consequences for its actions. We will choose our response accordingly. The IDF remains ready to counter any threat from Iran and its terror proxies as we continue our mission to defend the State of Israel.
He is seeming to confirm we're not done with this thing here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you watch over the last couple of days since this attack took place, there's no change in the mantra. We've got to defend our country, and by defense, that means sometimes you have to go on the offense to stop something. So again, they were in a defense mode when Iran originally attacked. Now they're like, okay, game on. We've got to come after them and stop the threat.
So the international community is coming alive as well through the UN Security Council, and there was an emergency meeting that was called over the weekend, and a little over an hour long. Wish we could show the whole video of it, but nonetheless, want to show a portion of a statement that came from the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Here's what he had to say in part.
Madam President, it's time to step back from the brink. It's vital to avoid any action that could lead to major military confrontations on multiple fronts in the Middle East. Civilians are already bearing the brunt and paying the highest price. And we have a shared responsibility to actively engage all parties concerned to prevent further escalation. As the Friendly Relations Declaration of 1970 states, acts of reprisal involving the use of force are barred under international law. We have a shared responsibility to secure an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, and the unimpeded delivery of humanitarian aid. We have a shared responsibility to stop violence in the occupied West Bank, de-escalate the situation along the Blue Line, and re-establish safe navigation in the Red Sea. We have a shared responsibility to work for peace. Regional and indeed global peace and security are being undermined by the hour. Neither the region nor the world can afford more war. Thank you.
Interesting statement from the UN Secretary General.
Very sweet. Unfortunately, sweetness doesn't secure borders. It doesn't protect people. It doesn't stop threats. UN Security Council and everything about the United Nations, I'm just going to be point blank, from my opinion, is totally useless. It's nothing but rhetoric, trying to get people to buy into peace, love, and harmony. That's ridiculous. It's never going to happen in this world because there's no such thing apart from Christ being on earth from of peace, love, and harmony going to take place. I wish that were the case, but it's not. So again, what is the UN basically saying? They're basically saying stand down, let Iran keep doing their thing, let the terrorists keep doing their thing, and Israel should just say, we're cool with this, we're happy with this, and let's just have peace. Not happening.
Did he not take a dig at Israel in his comments, talking about the occupied West Bank?
Yeah, again, Israel is not occupying their land. Genesis 15, God made it very clear what the boundaries are for Israel. Israel has 10% of the land that God promised to give to them. So there are a lot of occupiers on Israel's land. The Jews are not occupiers. It is their property.
There was also a statement, a response to, that came from many, many different countries, including Israel, including Iran. And we're just going to play a clip here from the United States ambassador to the United Nations.
The United States condemns in the strongest terms the unprecedented attack on the State of Israel by the Islamic Republic of Iran and its militant proxies and partners. Iran's intent was to cause significant damage and death in Israel. It launched over 300 munitions, including more than 100 ballistic missiles and land attack cruise missiles at Israel, as well as explosive unmanned aerial vehicles. Iran was also, in a broad sense, complicit in the October 7 attack on Israel because it has provided significant funding and training for the military wing of Hamas. This Iranian support contributed to the current crisis in Gaza. Colleagues, these and other reckless Iranian actions are not inherently defensive actions against other member states. Given the threats Iran's aggressive actions pose for international peace and security, we have a collective responsibility as members of the Security Council to ensure that Iran complies with the Council's resolutions and ceases its violations of the Charter. In the coming days, and in consultation with other member states, the United States will explore additional measures to hold Iran accountable here at the United Nations. More immediately, the Security Council must unequivocally condemn Iran's aggressive actions and call for Iran and its partners and proxies to cease their attacks. The United States also supports Israel's exercise of its inherent right to defend itself in the face of this attack. And as President Biden stated, we will remain in close contact with Israel's leaders. And let me be clear. If Iran or its proxies take actions against the United States or further action against Israel, Iran will be held responsible. We note Secretary General Guterres' statement warning that the region is at risk of plunging into a deeper and wider war on multiple fronts. The United States is not seeking escalation. Our actions have been purely defensive in nature. The best way to prevent such escalation is an unambiguous condemnation from the Council of Iran's unprecedented large-scale attack and an unequivocal call on it and its proxies and partners to refrain from further violence. Our goal is to de-escalate and then get back to the issue at hand, securing an end to the conflict in Gaza by getting a ceasefire in Gaza through a hostage deal, as well as surging humanitarian assistance to Palestinians in need. Thank you, Madam President.
That was his statement in part. Your response?
I don't have a good response because what a bunch of nonsense, to be quite frank. It's rhetoric. It's the common thing that the politician says after a tragedy happens. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. That's the typical rhetoric. That's exactly what this individual is stating. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. We hope everything turns out right. Let's all just calm down. The big issue here, when we go back to, let's get down to the basics, when the president, before this attack took place, had a one-word answer to every question about what America's going to do. Don't. D-O-N''T, don't. That was the big threat to Iran. That was the big input from our country. Again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the president, but that's not making a stance. What we just saw from the UN Council and what we see from the United States position is it's nothing more than rhetoric. Let's have peace. Let's not have fighting. Let's get our hostages back. Let's stop the war. Everything is what the people want to hear, but it doesn't breed results.
Let's pass a resolution saying no, no.
Exactly.
Slap you on the wrist,
right.
and then let's move on.
Right.
But meanwhile, Israel has been attacked again in this front. We talked about Rafah just a bit. A week ago, we were saying it was the Prime Minister had the day he was going in. We understand it's been put on hold at this time.
Yeah, and again, we don't know the insider information. We get what the open source things are giving to us. We can speculate. I think there's a couple of different things. Now, again, Israel knew the possibility that Iran would attack. Well, of course they did. Now they've got to get that front ready to go. In other words, their military has to step up, get ready to do whatever it is they're going to do in Iran. Mm-hmm. So now they've added another major piece to the war. They're dealing, and we've gone through it several times already. They're dealing with Gaza. They're dealing with Lebanon. They're dealing with Yemen itself and Lebanon. And now you've got way over to their east. Now you've got a huge problem with Iran that fired off 350 major missiles. So again, how much can you put in what space? And the Security Council in Israel, they've got to be seriously strategic about how they handle this.
We'd like to open our phone lines this evening to take your questions on this issue or brief comments. Our phone number to inFocus, 414-935-45 3030. What's your reaction to all that's unfolded within the last couple of days? 414-935-3030. 800-733-8830 is a toll-free number, 800-733-8830. If you'd like to text in your question or comment, send us your name, the city you're texting from, and go ahead and send the text here. That number is 414-439-3585. 414-439-3585. Let me also ask you about this, because not only do we see tensions heightening in the Middle East, they're happening right here at home as well. Just today, we had the highway, the Kennedy Expressway, going to O'Hare International Airport, shut down all lanes with pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel protesters. It happened at the Golden Gate Bridge today as well. It is happening, we know, on university campuses, and also protests taking place in New York City. The burning of the flag, death to America.
Well, here's the thing, and I go back to my law enforcement days. Many folks that are watching knew of Sheriff David A. Clark, who was the sheriff of Milwaukee County. I took over after he resigned from that position. But here's the thing. When we were in law enforcement, here was the deal. You step on the expressway, you try and shut down traffic, the police, the sheriff's office immediately responded, took those people off, and took them to jail. That was that's what we did. Mm-hmm. Now here's what's happening. Law enforcement's getting weak. Instead of getting out there, getting their, if you will, the police, the sheriff's office, other law enforcement agencies, who's ever available, where's the law enforcement?
They're standing down.
They're doing nothing. Mm-hmm. Where is the rule of law? Where is, if you will, protecting the people? It's unconscionable what's taking place. Law enforcement is doing the same thing that the United Nations is asking Israel to do, and asking the American government, just stand down. It's okay. No, it's not okay, and we need to start taking a stand.
Yeah, indeed. And what we see that the inaction is actually emboldening the protesters to do even more.
Absolutely. If you don't hold people accountable, and that's the last clip that you played, I heard that word accountability multiple times. If you cross this line, we're going to hold you accountable. Mm-hmm. To do what? How are you going to hold them accountable? How are you holding Iran accountable, the United States of America and other allied countries and Israel, if nothing takes place? Well, again, I'm not for war, I'm not for violence, but unfortunately there's times when you've got to put the line down. You cross that line, you attack our people, you attempt to wipe out our, if you will, country as in Israel, you've got to take a stand, and you've got to stand hard and you've got to go to war.
Yeah. Friends, our phone number tonight, they're open. I'm sure you've got to have an opinion on these issues. Our question pertaining to it, 414-935-3030 is the number, 414-935-3030, or toll free at 800-733-8830. You may text in your question or comment to 414-439-3585. Here's a text coming in from Al in South Milwaukee. He said, I think this is better than full-scale war, but what was said at United Nations that has to be the last straw? Be ready, he is saying.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate the comment, and what is taking place? Well, we've got to understand that these government entities, they're just trying to shut everything down. Let things alone. Don't stand up. If we keep going on this trajectory, it's exactly where we're going to be. Whether you liked him or not, President Trump, he took hard stance. Mm-hmm. If you're going to fire up against us, we're going to take you out, and we're going to take you out quickly. Right now, everything is, well, you know, they really didn't do a whole lot, so we're really not going to respond. We're really not going to, if you will, draw the line in the sand. No offensive action, it's all defensive. Well, folks, if you don't take offensive action, you're going to get taken out.
Now, one of the criticisms that have been launched against Israel, they've not been proportional in the response to Hamas. One can't be proportional, can they?
Well, I'm going to go back to my law enforcement days again. You don't bring a knife to a gunfight, and the superior force is going to win. Good cannot win if it uses less force than that which is evil.
Let's go to Mayville. We have Kelly calling in tonight. Hi, Kelly. You're on the air.
Hi, I'd just like to say I agree with Richard Schmidt. I believe they have to be held accountable, and it's not being done now, and U.S. has to step up. That's what I believe.
Okay. Thank you so much. Being held accountable, how would Iran be held accountable for this?
Well, again, they are the ones that fired off 350 different types of weapons towards Israel. Again, I applaud our administration for defending Israel, which they did and did a wonderful job in that aspect. What does Israel need to do, and what should America do? And again, I know there's going to be differing opinions there. We're very, very pro-Israel, of course, as conservative Christians. We should stand behind our ally and defend them. I also know the other side of the equation is many people are saying, why in the world is America the world's police department when spending trillions of dollars on defense? Well, when we have an ally like Israel, when we've literally invested billions of dollars every single year to help out Israel, how much of a stand are we going to take? Are we going to retreat and say, you're on your own, brother, today? You know, we kind of help out with the fight, but I got your back, but I'm definitely not coming forward on it. It's a very, very difficult scenario that we're talking about here, and I know there's people are like, get in there, get to the fight, let's help them out, let's get this over with.
A couple more texts coming in here. Sandra from Milwaukee. Why did Saudi Arabia help Israel?
Great question. So you have Jordan, actually, which is right on the eastern border of Israel.
And maybe we can put the map back up on the screen here while we're talking to see
That'd be great. So you have Jordan that helped out. You have Saudi Arabia helping out. Quite frankly, with the Abraham Accords, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, a few other of these smaller Muslim countries are actually trying to work with Israel. Again, we have this other issue within the Muslim countries. We have Sunni Muslims, we have Shiite Muslims. Those that are trying to, if you will, work with Israel, Iran is very, very, very displeased with these based on the Sunni Shiite split. So that's really the reason why. You've got these two fragments, if you will, separating and fighting each other. But the bottom line is, and this is a very interesting dynamic, because usually all the Muslim communities are going to try and help each other in the end. But for whatever reason, with the Abraham Accords, with trying to make good with America as well as Israel, Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, in the Bible is known as Sheba and Dedan, talks about that in the prophetic picture. So it's interesting that they're siding with Israel right now, and thank God they are.
Friends, our phone number tonight, 414-935-3030, 414-935-3030, or 800-733-8830. Our text line, 414-439-3585. Another text here. The last one was Sandra. This is now Sandy.
All right.
Sandy has a question, has a couple of questions. Are all the ruling factions of Israel coalescing around Netanyahu's leadership?
Oh, in other words, is everybody pro-Netanyahu? No. That's the point-blank question. We'll give a little bit better answer than that. Again, Netanyahu, I believe in Israel, has got the dominant support behind him. A couple of things that we've seen which are very disturbing from America. Some people are aware of an individual named Chuck Schumer, a very powerful individual in Washington. And he actually came out and asked that it's like we need an election, we need to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu, and that he just didn't like the way he's handling the Gaza situation. Well, actually, a couple of minutes before we went on air, I just saw a particular thing that came out from the media. Benjamin Netanyahu has overwhelming support right now. That's just minutes ago that came out. So. Yeah, not everybody's going to like it, but the majority of people are like, keep him in power.
We've got several lining up here. Here's another question. Could you make a brief statement on Israel's friends, that is, countries that have helped in this crisis?
Yeah, well, we have United Kingdom, we have some of the NATO countries, we have France, we have Germany, of course, the United States, Jordan, which is, we just mentioned, Saudi Arabia, which we just mentioned. So these nations are actually, at least for the time being have lined up and are defending Israel, which is wonderful.
Frank from Union Grove. Pastor Rich, what is your opinion as to what the Iranian news is reporting to their people about this failed attack?
Well, it's interesting because if you find out what Iran is saying, they're talking about this was a great victory. We really gave it to them.
We showed them.
Oh, and again, their government, their ayatollahs, if you will, they've got to look like they're in control, like they've really gave it to them. And here's an interesting thing. Now, here's how it's going to get spun. And what we're seeing now is how much money of Israel, the United States, and so forth, how much of the Iron Dome, the Arrow 2 and 3, the David Sling, this cost millions and millions and millions of dollars, if you will, to take down a great deal of what took place, 99% of it. So there's the speculation that's coming out of Iran now that potentially they're weakening the defense system by causing so much of the rockets and the missiles from Israel and others. Are they weakening Israel's ability to defend themselves by sending up all these rockets at one time? That remains to be seen. But based on the little bit of intelligence we get from open source, it appears Israel's still in very good position.
But it seems like their resolve is being strengthened through all of this.
Absolutely. You keep punching somebody in the nose, they're going to get stronger.
Yeah. Here is Alicia from Sheboygan. Do you believe that our men and our children will be drafted for war to help Israel?
Americans? No. Here's why, at least not at the present time, because the president made it very clear he's not going to help in the war against whomever that Israel's trying to fight. Same thing, and I don't want to get off topic, but look at Ukraine. The president said, I'm not sending troops, I'll send money, I'll send missiles, I'll send support. He says he's saying the exact same thing to Israel now. We'll send you money, we'll basically help with your defense, but we're not putting, if you will, boots on the ground. So I don't see that taking place unless there's a major policy change.
We were talking earlier about the protests taking place here in the United States, the Golden Gate Bridge, the roads going to Chicago O'Hare International Airport. It's happening in other locations, too, around the country. This is Dr. Schmidt talked about how, this is from Nikki in New Berlin. Dr. Schmidt talked about how in the past he and others would break up and arrest protesters who stopped traffic on streets and freeways. How and when did that stop? Is law enforcement too busy to respond, or who has given the orders to stand down? Mayors, governors, law enforcement, leadership? How do we get law and order back?
Well, unfortunately, the only way you get law and order back is to put the right people in the right places. The reason these things have stopped is when you take conservative out of office and you vote in, quite frankly, it's going to be point blank, when you put liberal individuals in that are more concerned about pleasing the people than they are about law and order, this is exactly what you get. So unless our country begins to get on board and say enough with the nonsense with liberalism, with the lack of support for law enforcement, with the lack of getting rid of these, and pretty much it's gone. The defunding the police movement is pretty much dead, because when you go even into the neighborhoods where they didn't want cops before, they're getting sick and tired of the rapes and the murders and the robberies and the burglaries. You can't live like that. So it sounds good, get rid of the cops, they're nothing but a pain in our neighborhood until they're not there. Then they really find out what the problems are.
What's troubling, too, in some of these protests is the chance of death to America. And I asked my question, do they really know what they're asking for? Do they really know what's embodying that statement that they're saying?
Yeah, and we've just seen this recently in the media, where this strong rhetoric about wipe out America. I don't care if you're liberal or conservative. When you're talking about this type of rhetoric, they're basically saying, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, or whatever. It's basically the rule of the mob theory. It's not a good thing. It's socialism, it's Marxism, it's communism. I basically go down to one thing. And again, I always like to go back to Scripture. I like to call this the Luciferian doctrine. What does that mean? It means that it's the satanic, demonic push to try and destroy that which is good, pure, and biblical by going to violence. The same reason God destroyed the earth in the universal flood. People went to violence.
Why does all this matter? I mean, our whole discussion tonight, Israel, the Middle East, our focus there, why does this all matter?
Well, here, when we bring it all back down to the bottom line, what does all this mean? Again, we're seeing a lot of things taking place that are setting the stage for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled. God's word will be fulfilled. We talked about Ezekiel 38 and 39, when all the nations surrounding Israel are going to rise up and come after her. This is setting the stage for that. So again, I'm not shocked by these things. I'm no way I'm surprised by them, because Iran is going to be, as Ezekiel 38. When we look at the nations that are going to rise up, we're looking at Turkey, we're looking at Libya, we're looking at Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, Ethiopia, and Russia, of all things, are mentioned in these passages. They're going to rise up, they're going to attack Israel, and they're going to try and institute this one world government. Not surprising, these things are setting the stage right now for what God said will happen.
These countries you just mentioned are all massive persecutors of believers in Christ as well.
Absolutely. I mean, they're anti-Christian, they're anti-biblical worldview. They're all on this, we will master the universe, and with it a globalist bent.
Do you believe as a whole that the church is attuned to what's going on, understanding of the times in which we live?
No. I think, unfortunately, and here's the truth of the matter, 50% of all churches believe in replacement theology, and it may even be higher than that. In other words, Israel doesn't matter. And that may be one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of people upset in the Christian community, because it's like, well, the 50% of those that teach what's called replacement theology, in other words, the church-age Christians have replaced Israel. I mean, it's a heresy, in my opinion. They talk about supersessionism. In other words, the church has superseded Israel. What does all that mean? It means they take away the covenants that God gave to Israel, the Abrahamic covenant, the Davidic covenant, the New covenant, the land covenant, which are unconditional covenants for the Jewish people. Well, 50% of the people that we would say are, that we'd fellowship with and are Christians don't believe there's any hope for Israel, and they don't need Israel. That's a huge problem. The 50% or so of churches that believe that God has a future for Israel, we're the ones that take it dead serious. And it will. This is going to come to pass exactly as Scripture stated. Yeah. Israel's not going away.
Pastor Schmidt, thank you for being back with us this week.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Much has unfolded. Pastor Richard Schmidt, let me give you a couple websites. ProphecyFocusMinistries.com. ProphecyFocusMinistries.com. Learn more about his ministry there in Bible prophecy, and also related to his TV broadcast here on VCY. And he is pastor of Union Grove Baptist Church. The website, myugbc.com. Stands for My Union Grove Baptist Church, myugbc.com. Phone number 262-878-1264. Friends, thank you for joining us here on tonight's In Focus. We encourage your continued prayers for the peace of Jerusalem.